Chapter 101 Guillotine. The next morning, a stage was set up in the middle of North Pine Town, making the townspeople curious about what it was meant for. Is there a performance today? I don't think so. I haven't heard of a troupe visiting the town. House Silvasud must have set this stage to announce something important. While the townspeople were curiously chatting between themselves, a few warriors suddenly appeared carrying something covered by a cloth. Look, they are coming. What's that thing? I have no idea. Everyone watched as the warriors set up the item on the stage. When the warriors removed the cloth, a guillotine was revealed, shocking everyone to their core. Holy shit! Who is going to be executed today? More and more townspeople gathered at the venue when news spread that there would be a public execution. An hour later, hundreds of people had already gathered at the site, waiting for the execution to begin. At this moment, more warriors appeared and they were dragging a few people whose hands were chained. The townspeople were curious to know the identities of these individuals, but their faces were covered by a cloth, making it impossible for everyone to guess who they were. "It's Lord Alaric," someone exclaimed. Everyone turned their head when they heard this. Alaric calmly walked towards the stage under the heated gazes of the crowd. "The mission is still set at normal, so I need to be careful." To ensure a smooth process, Alaric invited William to watch the execution. With the old man around, he could rest assured that no accident would occur. Upon stepping foot on the stage, Alaric raised his hand, signaling to the audience to keep quiet. "Everyone, I have an important announcement to make." Alaric scanned the crowd with a solemn look. "Today, we will be executing the criminals who had attempted to poison the Baron." When the townspeople heard his words, they almost flew into rage. Lucas was their lord, an important symbol of North Pine Town. Everyone respected him, for he was a great leader who had never oppressed the poor. They would never forgive those who would attempt to take his life. Alaric sent a signal to the warriors to remove the cloth that covered the criminals' faces. As soon as their faces were revealed, the townspeople immediately rained curses at them. Many even started throwing stones and other objects at the criminals. Everyone was furious. The first person sent to the guillotine was Pamela. Her face was covered in bruises, and there were all sorts of wounds on her body, but no one felt pity for her. It looked like she wanted to say something, but because of the bruises on her face, she could only emit unintelligible words. Alaric announced her crimes as the warriors placed her on the guillotine. "Die, you bastard! Kill her!" After announcing her crimes, Alaric nodded at the executioner. Swoosh! The guillotine cleanly chopped off Pamela's head, sending it rolling onto the stage. Everyone cheered upon witnessing her death. Meanwhile, a warrior came to dispose of her corpse and another one grabbed her fallen head. In the next moment, the second criminal was sent to the guillotine. It was one of Charles's subordinates. Alaric stated his crimes before he sent a signal to the executioner. Swoosh! A few more criminals were beheaded. Some of them pleaded for mercy, but no one listened. There was also someone who tried to escape, but he was cut down in half by Galliner, who was at the scene. Soon, only 2 criminals remained. "The next person is Gerard." Alaric announced the man's crimes, which were even worse than the criminals who died before him. Alaric glanced deeply at Gerard. This man was an elite knight, so he had Galliner pin him down on the guillotine to ensure that he wouldn't escape. Surprisingly, Gerard didn't take any action. He just obediently laid down on the guillotine without saying a word. After announcing his crimes, Alaric asked him, "Do you have any last words?" Gerard lifted his head and muttered, "Please forgive me, Rue." Alaric sighed. This man was unlucky. He was a loyal subordinate, but he followed the wrong lord. Alaric sent a signal to the executioner. Swoosh! Gerard didn't activate his mana, so the blade cleanly cut off his head. Now only 1 criminal remained. For some reason, the townspeople felt that this person looked strangely familiar. The last person is the main culprit behind this incident. Please don't be surprised, everyone. This is Charles Silvasud. Because of his greed, he plotted to poison the Baron. As soon as they heard this name, the audience was stunned. They even thought that there was something wrong with their ears. However, when Galliner grabbed his hair, they saw his face. It's indeed Sir Charles. How could this be? I thought he was a good man. It turns out he was a devil. Kill him. Kill. Everyone felt betrayed. Wait, Charles shouted while looking at Alaric. Galliner immediately pushed his shoulder, forcing him to kneel. Alaric raised his hand to silence the furious crowd. Speak, he uttered coldly. Charles knew that his death was imminent, so he no longer bothered to conceal his true face. The kind face that he always had was now filled with loathing and insanity. Don't regret this, Alaric. You don't know anything. The town may look peaceful on the surface, but this place will soon be engulfed in flames. Ha ha ha. He laughed contemptuously. The people at the capital are getting restless with the Emperor's declining health. Soon, there will be a great war and North Pine Town will be forced to participate. Ha ha ha. I will watch you guys suffer and I will wait for you in hell. Charles was like a deranged beast as he uttered those words. Alaric's expression darkened. How does he know about this? Did one of the princes approach him already? He realized that the two princes might have already started gathering their forces in preparation for the Emperor's passing. With a cold look on his face, Alaric nodded to Galliner. The latter understood his intentions and grabbed Charles by the neck. He then pinned Charles to the guillotine. Swoosh! Underscore. Mission complete. Rewards: 500 battle points, 30 XP, 30 stat points. Random trait card by 1. Underscore. Chapter 102. New trait. Do you want to use the random trait card? Yes, no. He clicked no and opened his character profile. Alaric Silvasud 90 XP. 500s cannot receive more XP before advancement. Potential B. Traits: Horseback Riding C, Swordsmanship SSS, Close Combat C, Archery F, Hunting E, Tracking E, 6th Sense F. Strength 100. Stamina 40+. Agility 100. Vitality 27+. Endurance 42+. Mana 48+. Battle points 4,000 to 180. Stat points 64. Requirements for the next advancement: 500 EXP, 100 in all attributes, and 5,000 battle points. He then closed the cyan screen and stared at Charles's decapitated head with a complicated look on his face. He had finally disposed of the man who would have caused the downfall of the household. However, he felt no joy. On the contrary, Alaric felt uncomfortable. The last words that Charles had spoken were still lingering in his mind, repeating over and over like a broken cassette tape. There are still more things to do. Alaric didn't stay for long after the criminals were beheaded. He gave a closing speech and returned to the estate. Upon returning home, he didn't immediately go find his father. He felt that it was better to give the Baron some time to be alone. Inside his room, Alaric opened the cyan screen. Do you want to use the random trait card? Yes, no. This time, he clicked yes. You have awakened the F-rank monster affinity trait. Huh, what's this? Monster affinity. How does this work? Alaric furrowed his eyebrows. From the name, it sounded like it had something to do with monsters. I'll test it out next time. He closed the cyan screen and headed to the bathroom to remove the bloody smell on his body. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. On the 17th of January, in the year 209 of the Estanian calendar, the Baron's birthday celebration proceeded as scheduled despite the unexpected events that happened recently. North Pine Town was in an unusual mood. Some people were happy, while others were feeling unsettled because of what had happened during the public execution. There were a lot of visitors who came to join the Baron's birthday celebration, so the streets of the town were bustling with activity. At this moment, droves of carriages entered House Silversword's estate, carrying noble dignitaries from neighboring cities and towns. One of these carriages carried the representatives sent by House Paxley. Maurice, how do I look? Hershey asked her personal maidservant as she adjusted her dress. Mari smiled lightly at her and helped her adjust her clothes. "My lady, you already look perfect. I'm sure all those young men and warriors will be captivated by your beauty." Hearing this, Hershey shook her head and smiled as she thought of that familiar face. "I don't care about any of those men." Maurice chuckled at her words. She knew what her lady was talking about, for she was aware that Hershey had already devoted herself to one man. While they were chatting, the voice of the coachman suddenly drifted into their ears. "My lady, I apologize for disturbing your conversation, but this is the furthest I can take you." "All right," Hershey responded. In the next moment, the carriage door was opened by Cassandra, who came as the captain of her escort team. "My lady," the female knight bowed deeply to her and extended her right arm for Hershey to grab onto. Hershey grabbed her hand as she stepped down the carriage. Meanwhile, her maidservant, Maurice, lifted her dress to prevent Hershey from stepping on it. Upon stepping foot on the cobbled pavement, Hershey nodded to Cassandra. "Thank you, Dame Cassandra." The female knight lowered her head. "It's my pleasure to serve you, my lady." Maurice dusted off the snow on Hershey's dress before she rose to her feet. "My lady, there are so many guests. I feel nervous," she whispered while she discreetly observed the noble dignitaries coming out of the carriages. Hershey lightly turned her head and squeezed Maris's hand. "Just relax and don't mind them." Maurice nodded her head meekly. The trio headed to the venue, a special mansion meant for such celebrations. When they arrived, the place was already filled with people. The sounds of the musical instruments and the chattering of the crowd resonated in their ears. This combination of sounds created a unique atmosphere that made them feel the essence of the celebration. Hershey's arrival sparked the interest of many young nobles. Her beauty, her grace, and her temperament attracted these proud men. Some of them tried to strike a conversation with her, but Hershey only replied politely, and she didn't even try to prolong the conversation. Seeing that she had no interest in them, no one approached her anymore. They just stared at her and admired her beauty from a distance. "Lady Hershey is truly beautiful, but I heard that she will be engaged to someone." "What a pity," someone mumbled with a hint of regret. "Your news is outdated. I heard that she will be engaged to Lord Alaric." "Well, only Lord Alaric deserves a woman like her." The guests discussed eagerly as they watched Hershey step into the hall. Suddenly, the main character of today's event appeared. It was Lucas Silvasad, dressed in his custom-made suit emblazoned with a golden insignia of House Silvasad. His arrival silenced the crowd for a moment. His dignified look and his commanding presence awed the audience. As he went down the staircase from the second floor, Lucas's face remained stoic. Lucas stopped midway and scanned everyone's faces. His piercing gaze made the guests unconsciously adjust their posture. Seeing that he had gathered their attention, Lucas opened his mouth. "Good day, everyone. Thank you for coming to my humble estate to join my birthday celebration. I have prepared." His voice echoed through the banquet hall. "Please enjoy your stay here." Clap, clap, clap. The audience gave him a round of applause after his short speech. "Where is he?" Hershey looked around the hall, searching for that familiar figure. Just then, she suddenly heard Maurice gasping in surprise behind her. She raised her eyebrows and turned around. What happened? In front of her was the very man she was looking for. "How are you, my lady?" Chapter 103. Gift-Giving Ceremony. "My lord," Hershey exclaimed in surprise and joy. She suppressed her excitement and responded, "I have been well. How about you, my lord? I heard about what happened recently. I was worried about you." Alaric smiled at her. "I'm all right." Truthfully, he was still affected by his uncle's words, but he didn't want her to be needlessly worried. "I'm glad that you're all right." The two talked about other matters, and their conversation flowed smoothly as if they had been waiting for this exact moment. Suddenly, the two noticed a group of people approaching them. Alaric raised an eyebrow when he saw these people. "My lord, my lady," the person leading the group respectfully greeted before everyone followed suit. Hershey politely smiled at them, while Alaric wore a strange look. "How have you been, Lord Dillon?" Dylan forced a smile. Thank you for asking, my lord. I have been well, but I'm not feeling good these past few days after I heard that my brother has offended you. Upon saying this, he grabbed the chubby man behind him while keeping his eyes on Alaric. I brought my brother here with me to formally apologize for what he had done. I hope you can forgive him for his terrible behavior. I have already punished him, but I feel that it is not enough. Dylan was really afraid that Alaric would come to Redonia to seek revenge. He had heard about what happened to Liam Paxley in Ravad. The events that happened that day made the neighboring cities and towns take notice of Alaric. Alaric glanced at Reg's fat face, which had a bruise on the left side. He would have forgotten about his encounter with Rick in Turtle Fort if they hadn't come to visit. That was just a minor issue, Lord Dylan. Let's forget about it and move on. Alaric turned his head back to Dylan. This man would one day become a powerful warrior. Alaric didn't mind doing him this small favor. Dylan was relieved to hear that. Thank you for your magnanimity, my lord. He then glared at his brother and said, What are you waiting for? Go and thank Lord Alaric. Rick didn't dare go against Dylan. Thank you, Lord Alaric. He lowered his head. Alaric waved his hand. Just don't do it again, he uttered with a stern look. If it weren't for Dylan's sake, he would have already beaten up this guy. Alaric and Dylan exchanged a few more words before the latter excused himself. In the next few hours, more guests arrived, making the banquet hall more festive and noisy. Alaric had to leave Hershey for a while to help his father entertain the guests. After lunch, the most exciting part of the celebration began. It was the gift-giving ceremony. Lucas sat on the main seat, waiting for the guests to hand over their gifts. One by one, each representative stepped forward to give their gifts. Happy birthday, Lord Lucas. I am Dylan Heinrich of House Heinrich. I bring you this oceanic jade bracelet which symbolizes stability. Dylan presented an aquamarine jade bracelet to Lucas. As soon as this item was revealed, the crowd gasped in shock. This jade was unavailable in the north since its main material could only be found in the southern section of the empire. It was a rare jade worth over 1,000 gold coins. Thank you. Lucas seemed to be pleased with the gift. The next person came up to give his gift. Although it was also a valuable item, it wasn't as rare as the oceanic jade bracelet. A few more people came up, but no gift exceeded the value offered by House Heinrich. At this moment, the representative sent by the city lord of Vale presented his gift. My lord, I came here under the city lord's command to give you 50 tons of grain, 50 tons of corn, 50 tons of potato, and 50 tons of wheat. The crowd clapped their hands and cheered when they heard his words. During the winter, when food was scarce, that many resources could already feed more than 1,000 people for 2 months. Lucas nodded at the representative of the city lord. Please convey my thanks to the city lord. Yes, my lord, the man nodded in response. In the next moment, more guests stepped forward to present their gifts. Some offered large quantities of food and resources, while there were also others who presented the Baron with rare metals for production. Soon, it was finally House Paxley's turn to offer their gift, and the person who presented their gift was Hershey. Under the curious gazes of the crowd, Hershey gracefully walked towards the Baron, and following behind her was Cassandra, who was holding a wooden box. Hershey bowed to the Baron and said, I wish you a happy birthday, my lord. I am Hershey Paxley, and I came here to present to you one of the treasured relics of House Paxley. After uttering those words, she gave a cue to Cassandra to reveal what was inside the wooden box. The female knight uncovered the lid, revealing a dark-colored diamond-shaped shield. Isn't that? No way! As soon as everyone saw the shield, they were all dumbfounded. A relic! That's a relic, someone exclaimed with an agitated look. Even Alaric was surprised by this. This was because a relic wasn't just an ordinary item. Relics are items that could be imbued with mana without breaking. Unlike normal items, relics can withstand high-intensity mana. Hershey smiled at the Baron. This is one of the 3 treasured relics of House Paxley, the Dark Diamond Shield. From now on, this shield will be yours, my lord. Only someone like you is worthy of wielding this relic." As her words fell, Cassandra put down the box with her head lowered. Insane! They actually gave that relic as a birthday gift. This is probably their way of compensating House Silvasad for what happened in Ravad. Unbelievable! Chapter 104, Interrupted. To end the gift-giving ceremony, I would like to call my son, Alaric, to present the final gift to Lord Lucas. Maria, who acted as the MC of the celebration, announced to the crowd. Her words immediately garnered everyone's attention. Alaric was prepared since he had already been told about the sequence of the ceremony. He calmly walked towards the Baron under the heated gazes of the audience. Many young women openly expressed their admiration for him as he walked past them, but Alaric only responded with a polite smile. Even so, his casual glance was enough to make these young ladies giggle in excitement. To the enthusiasm of these women, Hershey didn't give much of a reaction. She felt that it was only normal since Alaric was the definition of the perfect man in every girl's dreams. At this moment, Alaric raised his hand, signaling to the crowd to keep quiet. He then cleared his throat and looked at his father with a smile. "My lord." Lucas nodded to him, his lips curving upwards to form a faint smile. "When we went to the Enchanted Woodlands recently, we were lucky enough to stumble upon one of the majestic creatures of that magical forest. My lord, I present to you my gift." Alaric snapped his fingers. In the next moment, Galliner appeared from the entrance of the hall, as if he had been waiting for this cue. Walking obediently beside the elite knight was a majestic brown horse with a silky black mane and a striking white blaze from its forehead down to its muzzle. Its striking appearance and intimidating aura awed the crowd. This is a disaster-grade frost horse, a creature that is native to the Enchanted Woodlands. Alaric gave a short introduction about the horse. Lucas was already aware that Alaric had brought these horses, but he didn't know that one of them was meant for him, and it was also the strongest horse of the bunch. "Thank you for the gift, Alaric. I like this horse a lot." Lucas stood up and rubbed the muscular body of the horse. From his expression, everyone could tell that he was satisfied with this gift. Meanwhile, the audience discussed in whispers after they heard that the horse was actually a disaster-grade monster. Monsters at this level could decimate a small village, and it would take a powerful elite knight to take one down. No one expected that Lucas would receive a creature like this as a gift, not to mention that it was from his son. They could only look on with envy as the Baron stroked the silky mane of the frost horse. And that was how the gift-giving ceremony ended. What followed was the luxurious banquet, which also served as the perfect time for all the guests to interact with each other. Some people took the opportunity to expand their connections, while some chose to remain low-key, standing discreetly in the corners of the banquet hall. The celebration continued until late in the evening. More than half of the guests left after bidding farewell to the host, while some chose to stay in the estate to rest for the night. Outside the venue, beside the koi pond, two figures could be seen walking side by side. "My lord, there is another reason why I volunteered to come here." Hershey glanced at his side profile with a determined look on her face. "I have thought it through. I must confess tonight." Hershey was feeling a mixture of emotions as she looked at Alaric's handsome face. Alaric stopped in his tracks. "Actually, I have been waiting for this moment," he muttered, his voice carrying the regret and guilt of his past life. He turned his head and stared into her eyes. "In this life, I will not hurt you anymore." "Hershey," he grabbed her delicate hand, making Hershey's eyes widen in shock. And with a smile filled with tenderness, he asked, "Will you accept me as your man?" Hershey gasped in utter disbelief. She was determined to confess her feelings to him, but Alaric was one step ahead. "Am I dreaming?" She lifted her left hand and pinched her waist. A sharp pain immediately registered, telling her that everything was real. Alaric chuckled at her silly expression, making the young lady embarrassed. Hershey shyly lowered her head. Oh. Just as she was about to respond, the snapping sound of a twig suddenly drifted into their ears. Crack! The two abruptly turned their heads and saw a young woman dressed in servant's attire smiling awkwardly at them. I didn't mean to eavesdrop. Please go on. Just pretend that you didn't see me. Maurice, Hershey exclaimed upon seeing her. My lady, I really didn't mean to eavesdrop. I only followed you because I was worried about your safety. Maurice nervously glanced at Alaric, afraid that he would blame her for interrupting their moment. Alaric chuckled and shook his head. There's no need to hide Dame Cassandra. I know you're behind that tree. Ahem. Cassandra cleared her throat as she revealed herself. She then bowed to Alaric and Hershey. We apologize for disturbing your privacy. It's all right. Alaric could only smile bitterly. He was already aware that they had been following them, but he acted like he didn't know. Who would have thought that these two would actually interrupt that perfect opportunity? My lord, it's my fault for not educating them well, Hershey sighed while glaring at the two women. It's not that serious, my lady. It's all right. Alaric forced a smile. Hershey awkwardly glanced at him. She didn't know what to do. You don't need to give me a response now, my lady. You should think it through. I'll take my leave first. Please excuse me. Although a bit disappointing, he could only excuse himself. The mood has already been ruined and he didn't want to force the subject. All right. See you tomorrow, my lord. I hope you'll have a good night. Hershey smiled ruefully. You two, Alaric reluctantly left after bidding her farewell. After he was gone, Hershey stood there with her arms akimbo, glaring at the two women with displeasure. You two, follow me. Chapter 105. From Steel Sword to Relic. Upon returning to his room, Alaric took a quick bath in his private bathroom and changed into comfortable silk nightwear. It's time to use that thing. Note: item upgrade card will be changed to equipment upgrade card to prevent confusion. Alaric hadn't used the equipment upgrade card which he had gotten recently. He had been thinking which of his equipment he should upgrade and he had finally made a decision. He looked to his left where two swords could be seen neatly placed on a hanging sword holder. He grabbed the sword at the top. This was just an ordinary steel sword before, but it had become something impressive after he used an equipment upgrade card on it. Do you want to use your equipment upgrade card on the selected item? Yes, no. Alaric had been hesitant to use it on this sword since he also wanted to upgrade the other one. However, he was curious about what would happen to the uncommon steel sword if it were upgraded once again. This curiosity drove him to press yes. Congratulations! You have upgraded your uncommon steel sword to rare steel sword. Rare steel sword. Sharpness, 20. Durability, 20. Unexpectedly, the weight of the sword didn't change. Alaric slowly pulled the sword, revealing a pristine blade. He ran his fingers through the fuller while admiring the blade's appearance. There are more changes to its appearance now. The blade is thicker, but a fuller has been made to reduce its weight. Although it looks bigger than it was before, the weight remains the same. Alaric was satisfied with the sword's new look. He gave it a few swings. Swoosh, swoosh. Oh! His eyes lit up when he felt almost no resistance as he cut through the air. The balance of the sword was impeccable. It felt perfect in his hand with no awkwardness. He infused mana into the sword, revealing the archaic patterns hidden underneath the blade. This isn't a steel sword anymore, but a relic. He realized that the sword wasn't rejecting his mana. Instead, it was greedily absorbing it. Furthermore, the patterns inscribed on the blade seemed to have awakened the dormant power of the sword. Alaric swung the mana-infused sword. Swoosh! A blade light was released as the sword slashed down. The blade light struck the thick wall with a bang. Bang! Holy shit! Alaric stared at the deep impression on the wall with a look of disbelief. He had only casually swung the mana-infused sword, but it actually left significant damage on the wall. Is this the power of a relic? Excluding the new shield they had gotten from House Paxley, House Silvesud only had one relic and it was in his father's possession, so he couldn't tell the difference. I better keep this a secret for now. Alaric put the sword back into its sheath before he carefully placed it on the sword holder. With this sword, can I fight against elite knights? Alaric was tempted to test this, but it was already late in the night, so he decided to postpone the idea. Let's try tomorrow. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. In the ghetto of a city in the northeast of the empire, a man dressed in rags could be seen leaning against the wall. He was visibly shaking from the cold, but he remained on his spot without moving, as if he was waiting for something. His right hand, which was tightly holding the dagger hidden underneath his clothes, had already turned stiff. Just when will those guys come out? The man narrowed his eyes as he observed the busy pub across the street. Suddenly, a few more figures appeared behind the man. "My lord, should we head in?" one of them muttered. The man turned his head and glared at the person who had spoken. "Didn't I tell you to call me boss recently?" "I'm sorry, be boss. I'm still not used to it." "You better get used to it soon if you don't want to be captured along with me," the man snorted. At this moment, his face, which had been hidden in the darkness, was revealed. This man was Liam Paxley, a wanted criminal who had been on the run after escaping the punishment of the sacred duel. Many things had happened to him since he left Dryvad. Together with the warriors sent by his mother, Liam somehow managed to escape. To hide his identity, he decisively carved a few scars on his face, and he even cut his hair short. Now, he had formed a small mercenary group together with his remaining subordinates. They were new to the city, but they had established themselves as a capable group after more than 5 successful operations. However, the most surprising thing was that Liam had already become a knight apprentice. "It's them. They're out," Liam mumbled when he saw their targets coming out of the pub. He made a hand gesture to his subordinates. The target was surrounded by 10 warriors, and one of them was an old knight. On the other hand, Liam's crew only had 6 people, but 2 of them were knights, while the remaining 4 were knight apprentices. Although they were outnumbered, Liam knew that they could pull off the assassination. The old knight who was protecting their target seemed to have sensed that something was wrong. "Enemies, grab your weapons and protect Sir Ben," the old knight shouted as he pulled his sword. Upon hearing his roar, the warriors immediately grabbed their weapons and surrounded their master. At this moment, a series of whistling sounds echoed. "Sue! Sue! Sue!" 3 unlucky warriors were hit by the crossbow bolts, and one of them, who was struck to the head, died on the spot. The other 2 fell to the ground, screaming in pain. "Don't panic. Hold your positions," the old knight shouted when he saw his man falling into disarray. Just then, he sensed a feeling of extreme danger. His eyes narrowed into slits as he diagonally raised his sword above his head. Clang! The javelin aimed at his head fell after hitting his sword. "Brace yourselves. They are coming." The old man glared in a certain direction. Chapter 106. Evading death again. 6 figures emerged from the darkness and rushed towards them. "Protect Sir Ben," the old knight barked at his men as he carefully assessed the enemies. 2 knights, and for knight apprentices, I need to stop the 2 knights while my men will take care of the others. One of you will stay and protect Sir Ben. The rest will follow me to eliminate the enemies," the old knight instructed with a grim look. "Yes, sir." In the next moment, the 2 sides clashed. The sounds of their weapons colliding resonated across the streets. Some curious people secretly watched the fight while maintaining a safe distance. In the slums, small-scale battles like this were common, so this scene wasn't new to the residents. Liam's crew showed their superiority in terms of skills. Other than the old knight who managed to hold back 2 of Liam's subordinates, the rest died one after another. "Go and run. I can't hold them back for long," the old knight roared as he pushed back Liam's crew all by himself. Hearing his words, his remaining subordinate immediately carried their master and retreated with haste. Seeing this, the old knight sighed in relief. "You're quite tough, old man. Why don't you join my group? I can pay you decently." Liam smiled at the old knight. The old man ignored him and fought his way out. He even managed to slay one of Liam's subordinates in the process, which made the latter's face turn dark. "Kill him. I want him dead." Liam was furious. The one who died was part of his mother's hidden forces, so his loyalty was unquestionable. Losing him meant he had lost another confidant. Liam's subordinates were also triggered by the death of their comrade. They charged ferociously while swinging their weapons at the old man. Clang, clang, clang. The old knight managed to parry their weapons, but because of his age, his stamina was starting to decline. His breath had become heavier and his arms were starting to lose strength. Not yet. I must kill the two knights to give Sir Ben a chance to escape safely. With a determined look, he infused his remaining mana into his limbs, giving a momentary boost in strength. The sudden increase in his power caught Liam's crew off guard, and another unlucky knight apprentice died after having his neck pierced with a sword. Liam was also injured, and if it weren't for the knights protecting him, his arms would have been chopped off. Damn! He winced as the pain registered. While the old man was still occupied by his men, Liam grabbed a handful of dirt and threw it at the latter's face. HM. The old knight unconsciously shifted his head. He was able to evade most of the dirt, but some still found their way into his eyes. Liam's subordinates took this opportunity to attack the old man. "You cowardly bastards!" the old knight roared as he forced his eyes open. With a burst of speed, he pounced at Liam, who seemed to be the leader of the group, but the two knights immediately blocked his path. The old man swung his sword, sending one of the knights flying, while the other one took a stab to his shoulder. After dealing with them, he rushed towards Liam and shouted with bloodshot eyes, "Die!" He raised his sword and was about to slash it down when he saw Liam pulling out a crossbow from his back. "Sue!" The crossbow bolt pierced the old man's chest, making him stagger and fall to his knees. Liam grabbed his sword and approached the old man cautiously. "Old man, many people tried to kill me, but no one succeeded," he muttered in a mocking voice. "You should have accepted my offer." Liam shook his head with disappointment. He then lifted his sword and swung it down hard. Swoosh! Suddenly, the old knight seemed to have regained his strength as he lifted his sword to block Liam's attack. Clang! The alarmed Liam immediately retreated while the old knight chased after him. "Save me, you fools!" Liam barked with a shaking voice, but his subordinates were too far to offer a hand. At that moment, Liam found himself leaning against the wall. "Damn!" The old knight walked towards him, eyeing him coldly with his bloodshot eyes. Just when Liam thought that he would die, the old man suddenly collapsed in front of him. Thud! Liam almost pissed himself. This was the second time he felt the feeling of impending doom. The first one was when Alaric challenged him to a sacred duel. He fell on his butt and breathed heavily while staring at the old knight's corpse. "My boss, are you all right?" Liam glared at them. "Do I look all right to you?" "I almost died." After lashing out at them, he stood up and repeatedly stabbed the old knight. "Damn you, old bastard." He then spat at the old knight's corpse and cursed at him. What about the target? Liam raised his head while wiping off the grime on his face. "I already sent our boys to chase him. He only has a knight apprentice protecting him now, so there shouldn't be an issue. We can't be careless. We must kill him tonight." Liam had lost two subordinates in this operation. The two remaining knight apprentices were even injured, including the knights. "Yes, boss." They immediately left the scene afterward. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. At the outskirts of the enchanted woodlands, 10 robed figures riding horses emerged. Their bodies were obscured by the oversized robes, making it hard for anyone to judge their appearance. "Everyone is ready to depart, Your Highness," one of the robed figures reported to the one at the forefront. Suddenly, a strong wind blew by, pulling off the hood of the figure at the front, which revealed her beautiful face. Her white hair danced with the wind and her serene eyes stared into the distance as she uttered, "Let's go." Chapter 107, The Trainee's Mission. On the 20th day of January, 3 days after the Baron's birthday celebration, House Silvesod welcomed another elite knight under their banner. "Congratulations on your advancement, Sir Arthur." Alaric was genuinely happy for this man. "It's all thanks to you, my lord. If it weren't for you, I might be stuck as a peak knight for a decade more, Arthur muttered emotionally. He was glad that he bent his knee to Alaric that day. It was the best decision he had made in his life. Arthur no longer looked like an old man. He looked as if he had returned to his 40s. This was one of the perks of being an elite knight. Alaric tapped his shoulder. Great timing, Sir Arthur. The newbies will be sent to the Evergreen Forest to eliminate the rampaging monsters that are harassing the travelers and the townspeople. I need an experienced warrior to watch over them during their mission. Do you think you can take care of this task? Alaric stared deeply at him. He had thought of sending Rigger or another knight for this job, but he felt that sending Arthur was a better idea. The latter had been confined in his house for almost a week, so it was a great opportunity for him to breathe some fresh air. Sounds good to me, my lord. I'll take the chance to exercise my bones. Arthur chuckled while flexing his arms. Good? You better get ready. They will leave after breakfast, Alaric reminded him. Yes, my lord. Oh, wait. I almost forgot something. Alaric beckoned to him. Someone will help you with this task, but he is mainly responsible for recording the newbies' performances. Arthur raised an eyebrow. Who is? You'll know later. Alaric waved his hand and laughed lightly. Seeing that he had no intention of telling him, Arthur didn't bother to ask. I understand. Then I'll leave them in your hands. I still have things to settle in Vale, so I'll take my leave first. You guys be careful out there. Alaric tapped the elite knight's arm. You can rest assured, my lord. Be careful on your way to the city. Arthur bowed to him. After Alaric left, Arthur went back to his house to prepare for the trip. Although his task was only to oversee the newbies' mission, he felt that it was necessary to bring his equipment. The Evergreen Forest might be relatively safe, but there still existed some dangerous monsters inside. As soon as he had prepared his equipment, Arthur immediately left to look for the newbies. At this moment, the trainees had already gathered outside the gates of the estate, waiting for the signal to leave. They stood in neat rows, their backs straight like a spear as they respectfully looked at the instructor in front of them. The instructor, a 30-year-old knight with a scar on his upper lip, announced with a stern look, "Today is your first practical combat training. Your task is to eliminate the monsters located on the map provided to your group leaders. Each monster you kill will give you a corresponding amount of points, and the points you get will depend on your overall contribution." He told the trainees about the rules of the mission. Everyone listened carefully, afraid to miss a single detail. To them, this practical combat training wasn't just a simple mission, but a chance to prove that they were ready. Among the trainees was Ilya. She was the only girl in the group. She had the least experience, but her desire to learn wasn't any less compared to the hot-blooded young men in the group. Lord Alaric has already taught me the basics of swordsmanship. I must use all that I have learned from him to keep up with these guys, she muttered to herself. She was one of the victims of Liam's cruelty, and fate brought her to Alaric. She didn't want to waste the opportunity given to her, and she also wanted to prove to Alaric that she could be a warrior too. While she was immersed in her thoughts, a middle-aged warrior suddenly came out of the gates. The instructor looked visibly surprised to see this man. "Are you Sir Arthur?" Arthur nodded at the stunned instructor. "I don't recognize you. Can you tell me your name?" "It's an honor, sir. I'm Owen. I recently became a knight with Lord Alaric's support." The instructor introduced himself. Hearing this, Arthur smiled. "So you are one of the warriors nurtured by Lord Alaric. It's a pleasure to meet you." "I feel deeply honored, Sir Arthur. By the way, are you the person sent by Lord Alaric to oversee the mission?" Woan asked. "That's right." Arthur nodded. The two chatted briefly before they went to the topic. "Since everyone is here, let's depart." Ilya stared at the middle-aged warrior. Sir Arthur looks much younger now. Did he successfully advance? Everyone was aware that Arthur was in the middle of advancing to the elite knight realm. Now that he was here to oversee their mission, this could only mean that he had already advanced. For this mission, 40 trainees were sent and they were divided into 4 groups, with each group having a group leader. The 4 group leaders were the best in the batch, and Alia even heard that 2 of them were already close to becoming knight apprentices. Her group leader was one of the 2, a man named Rasmus. Now that we're heading to the evergreen forest, I'm starting to feel nervous. Alia had never been in a real fight before. She only had sparred with the other trainees and instructors, but other than that, she was a complete novice. Just relax, Alia. A concerned voice drifted into her ears. She turned her head and saw her group leader staring at her. Mind your own business, she muttered coldly. After her experience with Liam, she developed intense hatred towards the opposite gender. The only exception to this was Alaric and some of the instructors. Rasmus smiled bitterly while shaking his head. Chapter 108, Trouble in the Store. Meanwhile, Alaric was heading to Veal for a surprise visit to his soap shop. He had been busy in the past few weeks, so he left all administrative duties to Vince. At this moment, Alaric was sitting inside the carriage, stroking the fur of the saber-fanged wolf cub. This little guy was one of the 6 cubs they found inside a cave during their trip to Ravad. Among the 6 cubs, this one was his favorite because it was the most obedient. My lord, what's its name? Hershey, who had decided to come with him, asked while staring curiously at the wolf cub. I haven't decided yet, Alaric responded. She gave a look of disapproval. That won't do. We should give it a name. It seems like you have already thought of one. All right, let's hear it. Alaric smiled faintly. Hershey nodded her head eagerly. This looks like a saber-fanged wolf, and they mostly awaken abilities related to water or ice. Why don't we call it Nyx? It means snow in the Elven language. Hearing this, Alaric was surprised. You know Elven language? Hershey smiled shyly at his deep gaze. Yes. I usually read during my free time, and I happen to read some books about the Elven language. That's cool. You're very talented, Hershey. All I know is how to fight. I can't even manage the territory well like my father does, Alaric sighed while shaking his head. There's nothing wrong with that, my lord. We all have our areas of expertise. In your case, you have unparalleled talent in swordsmanship that others can only dream of. Is that so? Her words made him feel better. By the way, you can call me by my name when there's no one else around. Hershey shyly lowered her head. About that, I'll try. There's no need to force yourself. I can wait. Alaric smiled at her. A while later, they finally arrived at the storefront of the soap shop. We have arrived, my lord, my lady. Galliner's voice drifted into their ears. The 2 stepped off the carriage and entered the shop. Upon entering, the first thing they noticed was the long line of customers queuing up to buy the scented soaps. Most of them were women, and there were even some noble ladies who came with their servants. My lord! Alaric turned his head and saw Josephus approaching him with quick footsteps. After Charles's death, this guy's complexion seemed to have improved. He looked more cheerful now than when his father was still alive. How's your job here? Do you find it boring? I can send someone to replace you if you want. Alaric tapped the man's shoulder. No, please. I like it here. Surprisingly, Josephus shook his head. I can interact with a lot of new people when I'm here, he explained. I see, if that's what you want. Alaric was glad to see him in better spirits. It seems like Charles was the reason for his suicide in my past life, but I still need to investigate this more deeply. He is Charles's son after all. My lady, Josephus bowed to Hershey when he saw her behind Alaric. Hershey smiled and curtsied in response. Has there been any trouble here lately? Alaric asked. Josephus rubbed his chin and replied, Sir Anthony has been sending some warriors to help us keep watch over the shop, so there hasn't been any trouble recently. However, there was a situation yesterday. He scratched his head and hesitated. Tell me, Alaric stared at him inquisitively. Actually, someone came here to ask if he could buy the store. Sir Vince was furious and chased the man out, but he said that he would come back after reporting to his lord. Alaric frowned upon hearing this. So they are starting to realize the value of the scented soap. It looks like I need to send more people to guard the store. He could already smell the trouble that was coming. I need to ensure the safety of the children. Who should I send here? At this moment, he suddenly thought of one particular person, Fredrin. The guy had nothing to do at the estate since Alaric hadn't given him a task. Thinking about this, he tapped Josephus's shoulder and said, "Don't worry. I'll send someone trustworthy to protect the store. Let's talk later. I need to speak with Vince. And can you hold this guy for me?" Alaric handed the Wolf cup to him and headed to the production room with Hershey without waiting for Josephus's response. "So the famous scented soap came from this store?" Hershey mumbled. "Oh, I didn't know our scented soap had already reached Raivad." Alaric chuckled. "There are only a few boxes that arrived in Raivad and they are mostly sold by passing merchants. The ladies in Raivad are crazy about them," she remarked with a light laugh. "I can send you a few boxes enough for your daily use." "Really?" "Of course." "Then I will gladly accept them," Hershey eagerly replied. Soon, they arrived at the production room where the soaps were being made. The facility has already been upgraded, so the children didn't have a lot to do. They are mostly responsible for checking the defective products and throwing them to be recycled. Vince also hired some adults to help with the packaging. At this moment, Vince was busy helping with the packaging, so he didn't notice Alaric's arrival. "My lord! Lord Alaric!" Some children noticed him, and it was only then that Vince discovered his presence. The man looked a lot healthier than before, and the bags under his eyes had mostly disappeared. However, his hair was a mess, and it seemed like he still hadn't changed his bathing habits. Vince grinned at him. "My lord." "Vince, you look much better now, but I think you should take care of your image too. You're a manager now. It's important for you to look presentable in front of our guests," Alaric reminded him with a bitter look. "Yes, my lord," Vince replied with a disinterested look. "Never mind. Can you tell me about what happened yesterday?" "I heard that there was a situation." Alaric inquired about the matter he heard from Josephus. "Oh, about that. I asked around and I discovered something interesting." Vince moved closer to him and whispered. "It turns out that person was sent by a noble from one of the main cities in the central parts of the empire." Hearing this, Alaric's face turned grim. Chapter 109, Ruse. This wasn't a minor matter anymore, and Alaric had a feeling that there was more to this than just a business dispute. There was something fishy about it, since the act was done so deliberately, as if their goal wasn't the soap business, but something else. Alaric pondered deeply, but he failed to understand the reasoning behind their actions. "Inform Sir William about this. I will go back to the estate and send more people here," Alaric muttered in a serious voice. "I understand, my lord," Vince nodded. "For now, just continue the production as usual, but you must be careful about strange individuals. If you discover something unusual, inform the warriors immediately," Alaric reminded him. "Yes, my lord," Vince revealed an uncharacteristic display of seriousness. Alaric left the production room with a grave look, while Hershey followed him in silence. "My lord, are you going back to the estate?" Josephus approached him upon seeing them coming out of the production room. Alaric nodded. "Yes. I need to make some preparations in case those people will come back to cause trouble here." He tapped Josephus's shoulder and took the Wolf cub from him as he added, "Report to me immediately if there's something you guys can't handle." "Yes, my lord," Josephus saluted. After bidding everyone farewell, Alaric and Hershey left the store and entered their carriage. Looking at Alaric's expression, Hershey spoke with a concerned tone. "I think this is just a ruse." Hearing this, Alaric stared at her in surprise. "You think so too?" Hershey nodded. "If they are truly interested in your business, they would have approached you instead of thoughtlessly provoking the store's personnel." With a hesitant look, she asked, "Have you offended someone lately?" Alaric took a deep breath. He already had an answer in his mind, but he didn't want to scare her. "Other than your missing brother, I can't think of anyone," he replied while shaking his head. Hershey became silent when he mentioned this. Alaric realized his mistake and apologized immediately. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to bring him up. It's all right. Liam is a criminal and deserves to be punished. We are also doing our best to search for his whereabouts. If there's any news, I will inform you right away." Hershey wanted nothing more than to capture Liam. He didn't want him to continue ruining their family's reputation. "Thank you, Hershey. Please convey my thanks to Lord Nathan and Lord Theo. When I have time, I will visit them and properly convey my gratitude." Alaric could feel House Paxley's sincerity in repairing the relationship between their households. "I will convey your message to them once I return home." Hershey smiled faintly. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. Meanwhile, within the evergreen forest, the warriors in training had already started their operation to eliminate the rampaging wild beasts and monsters. At this moment, Rasmus was leading his team to fight against an iron-headed warthog that was close to becoming a fatal grade monster. This monster looked like a typical warthog except for the thick iron pads on their faces, which they used to repel predators. Additionally, they were also bigger and more agile. Although this iron-headed warthog wasn't a full-fledged fatal-grade monster, it already had traces of mana in its body, making it sturdier and stronger compared to average wild beasts. "Surround it and don't let it escape," Rasmus instructed his teammates as he rushed forward. The beast was furious because they had stepped into its territory. It emitted a low grunt and charged at Rasmus, who was leading his team. Seeing the beast coming his way, Rasmus raised his shield and braced himself for the impact. "Stab it as I hold it back," he shouted as he tightened his muscles and held his breath in preparation for the collision. "Yes, sir," his teammates responded in unison. In the next moment, the warthog smashed into Rasmus's shield. Bang! Rasmus grunted in pain, but he bore through the impact by gritting his teeth. He planted his foot firmly into the ground, refusing to let the beast push him back. "Now," he shouted, his face contorting with pain. Upon hearing his command, his teammates immediately stabbed the warthog's body, but most of them failed to even penetrate its tough skin. Only a few managed to wound the creature. However, it wasn't enough to take it down. The beast was furious after having been attacked. It snorted and wildly lunged at the warriors who surrounded it, sending them crashing into the ground. Just as it was about to escape, Ilya suddenly threw a rope which caught its legs, making it fall awkwardly. Ilya couldn't hold on to the rope and was pulled by its immense force and weight. Seeing that the creature had fallen, Rasmus took the opportunity and thrust his sword into its underbelly. Poochie. His sword cleanly penetrated the thick skin of the warthog before cutting through its internal organs. Squeal! The beast squealed in pain and tried to run away, but Rasmus wrestled with it and repeatedly stabbed his sword into its body. His teammates also jumped in to help him hold the creature. Soon, the iron-headed warthog finally stopped moving. Rasmus pulled out his sword from its body while breathing heavily. His left shoulder was still feeling numb from that collision with the warthog, but he had to maintain his prestige as the leader of the team, so he acted like it was nothing. "Good job, everyone," he said to the group. He was happy with his teammates' performance. Although they weren't able to bring out their best, he was satisfied nonetheless. "Are you all right, sir? Why don't we get some rest before we continue heading deeper?" someone suggested. Rasmus shook his head. "We can't. If we stay here, the other groups will be ahead of us." Everyone became silent at his words. Seeing them in low spirits, he immediately said, "I understand that you are nervous, but we have to persist. How can we fight alongside Lord Alaric if we can't even handle some wild beasts?" His words ignited everyone's morale. Chapter 110, Maria's Foresight. An hour later, Alaric returned to the estate and immediately reported the situation to his parents. "I'm planning to send an elite knight to keep watch at the store. What do you think, Dad?" There was no one else around, so he didn't bother to use honorifics. The Baron leaned on his seat and rubbed his chin while looking at him. "Who are you sending there this time?" You just recalled Galliner, so it would be unfair for him if you send him again. Alaric shook his head and replied, I will be sending that person to the store. Hearing this, the Baron thought of the man he had brought recently. According to his subordinates, Alaric brought back an elite knight from his recent trip. He had forgotten about this since he had been busy the whole week. Now that Alaric had mentioned it, he finally remembered the matter. Can you bring him to me first? I'd like to speak with this man. Lucas didn't want to intervene in his son's matters, but the situation this time was different, so he wanted to be careful. Alaric nodded. I understand. I will bring him here. He immediately left the study room and sent someone to look for Fredrin. About 20 minutes later, Alaric returned to the study room with Fredrin. Greetings, my lord, my lady. Fredrin cupped his fists at the Baron and Maria. Maria smiled at him, while Lucas nodded calmly. Please take your seat. The Baron pointed at the seat in front of his desk. Thank you. Fredrin was a bit nervous. He knew that Lucas was a powerful warrior, someone who had etched his name on the Estanian dragon leaderboard. As if sensing his anxiety, the Baron smiled faintly. You don't need to be nervous. I just want to see the person that Alaric brought back from his trip. Fredrin squeezed out a smile. The Baron asked him a few more questions, but the things he asked were mostly about Fredrin's situation and personal experiences. Fredrin had nothing to hide and he answered everything honestly. Lucas didn't sense any deception in his words, so his face relaxed. Alaric is so lucky to find someone like Fredrin. Charles's death caused a severe impact on House Silversword's military strength, but because of the growth of Alaric's forces, this somehow filled the gaps in their ranks. Fredrin's arrival in particular was a huge boost to their military strength. Not to mention the advancement of Arthur and the emergence of new knights like Owen. Son, I feel that this matter isn't just about the soap business. Are you hiding something from us? Maria was sharp enough to notice the deeper details in his report. Alaric's face hardened. He knew that he couldn't hide it from his parents anymore. He took a deep breath and said, My lord, my lady, I think the two princes are already preparing for the battle for the throne. Lucas frowned, while Maria raised an eyebrow. How is this related to the situation in your store? Maria asked. Alaric adjusted his sitting posture and responded with a serious look. Before Uncle was beheaded, he mentioned something about. He told them what Charles said before he was executed. Are you saying that your uncle might have been approached by one of the princes? Lucas's face darkened upon hearing this. Alaric nodded. That's right, but I don't know which one he had sided with. I see. If that's true, then everything makes sense now. Maria mumbled, her countenance turning cold. I think the people behind Charles are deliberately provoking us. This must be their way of checking if we are already affiliated with someone. If my guess is right, someone will visit us soon and ask us to join their side. What will happen if we reject them? Lucas asked. Maria pondered for a moment before she opened her mouth. It depends on what kind of person we are dealing with. They might give us a warning or they might eliminate us since we are a threat to their cause. The Baron rubbed his temples, feeling vexed because of the situation. His brother left them in a big mess and now they have to clean up the mess. What should we do? Alaric's plan was to join the Crown Prince's side again. He knew which people would take his side, so he had some room to maneuver if it really came to that. Maria crossed her arms as she responded. We could join one of the princes, or we could establish a neutral side and invite like-minded people to join us. The former could save us from this predicament, but we need to carefully consider which side to support. As for the latter, it carries greater risk since we might offend both princes by choosing neither of them. Furthermore, we would need to find more allies who will take our side. Both choices have their advantages and disadvantages, but I think the best option for us is to remain neutral. Maria's response surprised Alaric. Why do you think so? Lucas stared deeply at her. As if she had already prepared her answer, she said, At the moment, both princes should still be gathering their forces, so the chances of them attacking us are slim. This means that we have some time to gather more people on our side. If we support either of them, we would be forced to join the civil war. Whether we win or lose, the empire's overall power will be affected. That's why there has to be a neutral side who would mitigate the damage caused by their dispute. Lucas was silent, as if he was trying to comprehend her words. Meanwhile, Alaric, who had seen the future, was amazed by his mother's foresight. "My lord, I agree with my lady's idea. I think we should establish a neutral side. In his past life, he chose to support the crown prince and it ended in his death." Alaric didn't want to repeat his mistakes, so something was needed to be done. Chapter 111, Nalagum? So you want us to establish a third faction that would maintain the balance. Lucas dribbled his fingers on the table. He was already convinced by Maria's explanation, but this matter involved the future of the household, so he had to be prudent. Let's proceed with the engagement between Alaric and Hershey first. Once we are tied with the Paxleys, they will have no choice but to take our side. We can start with them and gradually expand our influence over the households in the north. Maria glanced at Alaric when she said this. Alaric wasn't opposed to the idea, so he didn't voice out any disagreement. Lucas leaned on his seat and crossed his arms. "All right, I'll give you my approval. However, this has to be done discreetly. We can't afford to offend both princes at the moment," he sternly reminded them. Maria smiled as she nodded her head. "I will host a gathering with the wives of the nobles in the surrounding cities and towns. We might find some trustworthy companions among them." She shared her plans to the Baron, while Alaric quietly listened in amazement. His mother's ideas were even more foolproof than what he had come up with. After a thorough discussion with his parents, Alaric left the study room with Fredrin. "My lord, you can rest assured, I will not tell anyone about the things I heard, not even my wife," Fredrin muttered as soon as they stepped out of the room. The things he heard were too big, and if they got out, things would get troublesome and his family might even be affected. "I know, I trust you." Alaric smiled and tapped the man's shoulder. Fredrin was overwhelmed with emotions. It wasn't even long since they had met Alaric, but he was actually willing to trust him without hesitation. He even had an unusual feeling that Alaric might have already known him for a long time. On their way down the stairs, Alaric said, "The soap business is very crucial to the household's growth and development, so you must keep an eye on the things there for me. I will send more people to come with you. They are warriors that I have trained, so you can trust them. Do you remember Mark?" Hearing this, Fredrin thought about the hunter who was their fellow slave for a while. "He will be coming with you. Train him well. He has the potential to become a knight," Alaric casually mentioned. "I understand, my lord." Fredrin nodded. "I'll take you to see your subordinates. You must train them well since you will be leading them in the future." Alaric smiled at him. In the past few months since his regression, he had trained dozens of new warriors to improve the household's military power. And now he was handing some of those warriors to Fredrin. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. In the central area of the Estanian Empire, there was a big city known for its impressive defensive structures that almost made it look like a mega fortress. It was the home of over 1 million inhabitants, making it one of the most populous cities in the empire, the city of Nalagum. There were 4 households that ruled over Nalagum: House Magdalaga, House Kodera, House Urgel, and House Lanzon. On the surface, it seemed that all 4 of them were equal in power, but this was far from the truth. The strongest of the 4 households was House Lanzon, the earldom helmed by Earl Dave Lanzon. At this moment, there was a secret meeting being held in the estate of House Lanzon, and it was hosted by the Earl himself. Furthermore, the attendees of the meeting were lords of notable households and individuals with high status. "Gentlemen, thank you for gathering here on short notice," uttered Earl Dave, a man of majestic bearing who looked to be in his 50s. As soon as he spoke, all eyes gathered on him. "As you already know, we have already invited a majority of the surrounding powers to join our side, but we have encountered some issues in the north." The Earl's voice turned grave when he said this. "Our representative from the north was killed." Everyone narrowed their eyes upon hearing this. My lord, how did he die so suddenly? Didn't he just boast that he would give us the north in a few years? Someone muttered in a mocking voice. Some people laughed at his remarks. Earl Dave gave them a stern look, making everyone shut their mouth. It is unfortunate. He shook his head. Charles was a careful man, but he made a glaring mistake that ended in his untimely death. I'm sure you are aware of his situation. Everyone nodded. They all knew some information about their members. Charles was publicly executed by his nephew, and that idiot revealed our existence before he was beheaded. The Earl smashed his fist into the table, breaking it into smithereens. Everyone held their breaths when they sensed the Earl's rage. No one dared to speak a word. Now we have two options. The first one is to force Lucas to replace Charles. The second option is to find another replacement. Everyone discussed in hushed voices as soon as they heard this. They were divided. Some of them wanted to have Lucas on their side, while the others suggested finding another household to be their representative in the north. Silence. Earl Dave scanned everyone's faces and pointed at someone randomly. What do you think we should do? The person he had casually pointed took a deep breath before he responded. My lord, the North is too scattered, so even if we appoint a new representative, we wouldn't get any substantial results in a few years. I think we should focus our manpower on the central cities. Most of the powerful households are gathered here, so if we get them to join our side, we would have the upper hand against the second prince's forces. So were you saying that we should abandon the North? All Dave frowned. Chapter 112. Renanti's team. Not necessarily. The man nervously shook his head. Actually, I have already sent my people to figure out how Silversword stands, but if we can't bring them to our side, I already have another household in mind. You can leave the North to me, my lord. I won't fail you as Charles did, he confidently answered. Earl Dave smirked. You surprised me, Lord Kenneth. It seems like you were more prepared than anyone else in this room. The Earl was satisfied with his performance. In that case, I will leave the North in your hands. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. The days went by in the blink of an eye. The 30th of January came, but there was still no news about the people from the central cities. That's odd. Alaric couldn't understand what was happening. He had already sent Fredrin and a team of warriors to protect the soap shop. However, he hadn't received any word from them for over a week. At this moment, he was on his way to send off Hershey. She had overstayed in North Pine Town, and her father had sent a message asking for her immediate return. My lord, I will miss the tranquility of North Pine Town, uttered Hershey, who was about to enter her carriage. Hearing this, Alaric smiled at her. You can come back here anytime you want. Hershey smiled as she stared deeply into his eyes. She wanted to dive into his arms and openly reveal her feelings, but she had an image to maintain. She didn't say a word, but Alaric seemed to have understood the meaning behind her gaze. Before you go, I have something for you. Alaric gave a signal to Elena, who was standing behind him. In Elena's arms was a plump wolf cub. Alaric took the wolf cub from her and handed it to Hershey. Among the 6 cubs, this guy has the biggest appetite and it often sleeps a lot. I hope you can take care of it well. Hershey fell in love with the cute little guy. She gently rubbed its fur and it instinctively kicked her hand, which made her chuckle. She then lifted her head and looked at Alaric. Thank you, Alaric. I will take care of it. Please be careful on the road. I will. The two exchanged a few more words before they bid each other farewell. Just as they were about to leave, Hershey stuck her head out of the carriage window and said, I like you, Alaric. I will always choose you even if everyone is against it. Without waiting for his response, she hurriedly closed the window. Alaric stared at the departing carriage with a smile on his face. Just a little bit more, Hershey. When he could no longer see the entourage, Alaric turned around. Standing in front of him was Elena. She had a complicated look on her face. She looked like she wanted to say something, but she couldn't utter a word. He sighed and took the girl in his arms. Feeling his warmth, Elena hugged him tightly and refused to let go. After what seemed to be an eternity, Elena reluctantly let go of him and squeezed out a smile. "Don't worry about me, my lord. I understand your situation." Alaric rubbed her head and said, "Let's go back inside." Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. Meanwhile, within the evergreen forest, the practical combat training of the newbies was still underway. The 4 teams had already eliminated a large number of wild beasts, so their mission was slowly drawing to a close. The group that had shown the most impressive results was the team led by Renanti, the top performer of the batch. With the combination of his excellent commanding ability and his combat skills, his team achieved the best results. Even Arthur was impressed by him. At this moment, Renanti's team was about to return to their camp when they suddenly encountered a monster. It was a 4-legged beast with sharp fangs and razor-like claws. "A blue-ringed white puma," someone exclaimed in fear. Renanti furrowed his eyebrows, "Stick together and prepare for battle." He shouted to his terrified teammates, "This beast isn't like the wild beasts we fought before. This heavy aura, I'm sure that this is a fatal grade monster." A fatal grade monster was mostly stronger than a knight in terms of power. Facing this kind of creature, he knew that they were no match for it. "If only I was a knight apprentice, there might be some chance to take it down, but with my current strength, it's impossible." Renanti glanced at his teammates and saw them cowering in fear. "Don't run. We must stay together," he barked at them. His words seemed to have calmed them down, but it was obvious that they didn't want to confront the creature. "What should we do?" Sweat trickled down Renanti's face as he racked his brain. At that moment, the beast suddenly disappeared and rushed towards them with lightning speed. It was so fast that they were barely able to see its figure. "I'll take the front. Shield bearers, protect the archers," he shouted. However, his teammates seemed to be paralyzed in fear. They were unable to properly react to his commands, making their formation messy and full of holes. Renanti frowned upon seeing this. "There's no choice. I must fight it. Hopefully, the instructors are nearby." After some hesitation, he lifted his short spear while keeping his eyes on the monster. Roar! The monster emitted a furious sound before it lunged at one of his teammates, brandishing its sharp claws. Swoosh! Renanti was quick to react. He rushed forward and stabbed his spear towards the creature's side, forcing it to evade. Growl! The beast was enraged. It glared at Renanti with its ferocious eyes. "Do you all want to die? Snap out of it," he roared. Renanti's words brought his teammates back to reality. They knew that one of them would have already died if it weren't for his quick reaction. If you want to survive, listen carefully. Chapter 113, Owen's timely arrival. Let's go with Formation B. Renanti could only hope that his teammates could perform their respective roles. They had trained to fight in different formations before, and each individual had a crucial role. A slight error could destroy their formation. The blue-ringed white puma growled at them. Its legs were taut as if it was prepared to take action at any second. Renanti stared deeply at the creature. He didn't dare blink his eyes, afraid that he would miss its attack. There wasn't anyone in his team who could follow the beast's movements, not even him. Formation B focuses on defense, but there are 2 sides that are intentionally left open to serve as bait. Since they couldn't match its speed, they could only try to predict its action. With its natural instincts, it will definitely attack the sides that are left open. My job is to predict where it will go. Renanti took a deep breath as he narrowed his eyes. After a few seconds of deadlock, the puma finally lost patience and pounced at their formation with a growl. Growl! Its figure blurred as it rushed towards them in a flash. "Left hole, sword out," Renanti shouted almost instantly. One of his teammates stuck his sword to the left opening upon hearing his commands. By some stroke of luck, the sword's blade stabbed into the puma's paws, making it whimper in pain. However, the force of its claws still broke their formation apart, and the shield bearer who took most of the damage crashed into the ground with a bang. Bang! In its rage, The puma swiped its claws, sending half of Renanti's group flying into the air, leaving deep claw marks on their bodies. When the enemy is too strong, no amount of strategy can stop them. Renanti thought bitterly when he saw the creature destroy their formation like it was nothing. Just when the beast was about to attack the remaining half of Renanti's team, a figure suddenly appeared to block its path. Instructor Owen. The trainees' eyes flashed with relief when they saw this man appear. Go tend to the wounded. Leave this monster to me, Owen instructed with a stern voice as he pulled the sword tied to his waist. In the next moment, Owen and the blue-ringed white puma engaged in a fierce battle. Bang! Bang! So that's how powerful knights are when they are serious, Renanti muttered in awe as he watched Owen fight the puma without being at a disadvantage. They had been taught that monsters at the fatal grade were mostly more powerful than knights. However, their instructor seemed to have the upper hand, and he even managed to land a few hits on the puma. Instructor Owen is not an ordinary knight. This was everyone's thought as they watched the battle unfold. After more than a minute, Owen's sword slashed into the puma's neck, causing a spray of blood that left the creature severely wounded. It swayed awkwardly as it tried to escape, but Owen stabbed straight into his heart and killed the creature immediately. After killing the puma, Owen made a cut on its body and dug into the creature's chest. A few seconds later, he found its beast's soul crystal and pulled it out from its corpse. Are you guys all right? Owen turned his head over to Renanti's group. Everyone is alive, sir, but one needs immediate medical attention, Renanti reported with a grim look. He felt that he was responsible for his teammates' injuries. Owen approached him and tapped his shoulder. Don't blame yourself. You did the right thing. If not for your instructions, some of your teammates would have died. His words comforted Renanti. Patch up the wounded. We will return to the estate once the other groups are here, Owen uttered. The four groups had mostly eliminated the wild beasts and monsters that had crossed the periphery of the evergreen forest, so it could be said that they had already accomplished their mission. The remaining wild beasts would be taken care of by the local hunters and wandering warriors. The death of the blue-ringed white puma marked the end of the trainees' first mission. Soon, the medical personnel on standby at the entrance of the town arrived to provide treatment to the injured trainees. At this moment, Renanti was watching the doctors administer treatment to his teammates. It's not your fault, Renanti. No one here is blaming you. In fact, I'm sure everyone is thankful that you are our leader. It would have been pure chaos if you weren't there. His injured teammate chuckled while grimacing in pain. Hearing this, Renanti forced a smile. You guys better heal up soon if you don't want the others to overtake you, he jokingly said. While the injured trainees were being treated, Owen and Arthur exchanged viewpoints about the four groups' performance. How is Renanti's team? Arthur asked. He had sensed the fluctuation of mono when the blue-ringed white puma appeared, but he didn't go to the location since he knew that Owen was there. However, he felt a bit regretful that he didn't see the action. They are doing fine. One of them broke his arms, but he should recover in a few weeks, Owen replied. He then took out the beast's soul crystal and handed it to Arthur. By the way, sir, I got this from the monster's body. What should we do with it? Arthur inspected the crystal before giving it back to him. You killed it, so it should naturally belong to you. However, those kids managed to wound the creature, so you must give them a little something. Owen nodded. I will report this to Lord Alaric. I also believe that they deserve to be rewarded for their excellent performance. He had seen Renanti's team fight the blue-ringed white puma. With Renanti's strategy, they were even able to wound the monster. Then let's do that. Arthur nodded in agreement. Half an hour later, they all returned to the estate to report the situation to Alaric. Chapter 114, A Suspicious Group Arrives in Vale. Meanwhile, inside the room specially made for the saber-fanged wolf cubs, Alaric and Elena were playing with the little guys when a servant came to deliver a report. My lord, the trainees sent to the evergreen forest have returned. Hearing this, Alaric put down the wolf cubs and patted his pants as he rose to his feet. I'm listening. Go on. The servant cleared his throat and said with a serious face, "Some trainees are injured and from what I've been told, it seems like they encountered a fatal grade monster." Alaric frowned. "All right. I'll be there to check on them. You may leave." The servant took the cue and left right away. Alaric turned his head over to Elena and said, "I'll leave them in your care, Elena. I'll go check the trainees first." Knowing that the situation was urgent, Elena nodded. "Yes, my lord." On his way out of the main mansion, Alaric checked his profile. Alaric Silvasud 90 XP. 500 500s cannot receive more XP before advancement. Potential B. Traits: Horseback riding C, Swordsmanship SSS, Close combat C, Archery F, Hunting E, Tracking E, Sixth Sense F, Monster Affinity F. Strength 100, Stamina 40+, Agility 100, Vitality 27+, Endurance 42+, Mana 48+, Battle Points 4410, Stat Points 77. Requirements for the next advancement: 500 EXP, 100 in all attributes, and 5,000 battle points. I'm about to become an elite knight, but my potential is still B. I wonder what's needed to be done to improve it. Alaric thought as he closed the science screen. Well, at least I now know what the monster affinity trait does. After a series of tests in the past week, he discovered that most wild beasts and monsters would be unusually attracted to him. Normally, wild beasts would react aggressively to humans, but because of his monster affinity trait, it was as if they treated him like their own. Unfortunately, this only worked on wild beasts and some weaker monsters. He tried it on fatal grade monsters, but they were mostly hostile. As soon as he stepped out of the mansion, he saw Arthur in the distance chatting with Owen. The two warriors spotted him and immediately rushed to his side. "My lord!" Alaric waved his hand. "Tell me the situation." Arthur sent Owen a look as if telling him to give the report. Owen understood this and cleared his throat before he told Alaric about the events that had transpired within the evergreen forest. "I see. It's good that everyone is all right. What do you guys think is a fitting reward for Renanti's team?" Alaric asked for their opinion. Owen thought for a moment before giving his response. "My lord, I think giving them a custom-made weapon is a good reward for their performance. The ones they have are mass-produced weapons which couldn't bring out their full potential." A custom-made weapon? Alaric didn't expect this suggestion. He was thinking of giving them some mana-rich resources, but Owen's words made him realize that their rewards had to be special. He rubbed his chin thoughtfully. House Silvasud wasn't known for their smithing, but they still had a group of skilled blacksmiths who could make fine weapons. If he used the science screen's standard of grading, the weapons they made should be at the uncommon grade. "All right, I'll give you the funds for those custom-made weapons." Alaric gave his approval. Rewarding the exemplary trainees would definitely spur the others to do better. After discussing with Owen and Arthur, he visited the injured trainees and offered them words of encouragement. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. At the entrance of Vale, a group composed of 20 individuals arrived. All of them were armed, making the gate guards conscious around them. "So this is Vale. They call this place a city," one of them uttered in a mocking voice. His companions nickered at his remarks. "Shut up," reprimanded a middle-aged man with a horizontal scar that stretched from his left cheek towards his nose. The group immediately quieted down upon hearing his words. This was because this middle-aged man was their leader, an elite knight who strictly adhered to his principles. "Remember what we came here for. Although this land isn't comparable to the central area, there still exists some powerful warriors here," the middle-aged man sternly reminded. Suddenly, he narrowed his eyes when he sensed a powerful aura approaching them. Sensing the change in his expression, his subordinates immediately followed his gaze. They saw a warrior with graying hair walking towards them with confident strides. Sir Anthony, the gate guards respectfully greeted the man as soon as he walked past them. It was Anthony. When he received a report that there was a group of powerful warriors at the gates, he quickly came here. One elite knight and the rest are knights. Anthony was stunned by this lineup. This group already had the power to rival a weak household on its own. Furthermore, the elite knight wasn't an ordinary warrior either. He could sense that this person was far stronger than him. I am Anthony, the captain of Vale's city guards. I'm pleased to meet you, gentlemen. He introduced himself with a faint smile. The middle-aged man with a horizontal scar stepped forward and extended his hand as he introduced himself. It's good to see you, Sir Anthony. I'm Roland, the leader of this party. Anthony shook hands with him while keeping the smile on his face. May I know the reason for your visit, Sir Roland? To tell you the truth, we're here to talk business with the Silver Swords, but we don't know where we can find them, Roland calmly responded. Anthony's eyes flashed briefly upon hearing this. There's something fishy about these guys. I should alert Sir William. With a cordial smile, Anthony replied, I see. You can find Silver Swords territory in the next town if you follow that direction. They also have a store here. I can send my men to take you there. That would be great. Thank you for your help, Sir Anthony. Roland cupped his fists. I'm glad to help, Anthony chuckled. I need to buy some time. Before we head there, why don't you guys join me for a meal? I'm sure you are hungry from the journey. Chapter 115, Roland meets Fredrin. I appreciate the offer, Sir Anthony, but we are in a hurry. Maybe next time, Roland tactfully rejected his invitation. It seems like the Silver Swords are close to the city guards of Vale. He was sharp enough to notice that Anthony was trying to delay him. Is that so? What a pity. Anthony shook his head with a regretful expression. The two exchanged a few more words before Anthony instructed one of his men to bring Roland's party to the soap shop. As soon as they left, Anthony's face became somber. He sent his subordinates a look and said, Send a few people to follow that group and report their movements to me every 2 hours. Yes, sir. His men sensed the seriousness in his tone, so no one dared to slack off. After giving more instructions to his subordinates, Anthony rushed to the orphanage. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. Sir, that shop over there is the soap shop owned by the Silver Swords. I see. Thank you for taking us all the way here. Please accept this. It's a small token of my gratitude. Roland smiled as he handed a small pouch to the warrior. The warrior grinned as he took the pouch. It's my pleasure to help you. Seeing that Roland was no longer interested in talking with him, the warrior decisively turned around and left. Once inside the shop, remember not to cause trouble, Roland reminded his men with a stern look. Yes, sir. A moment later, they crossed the road and were about to enter the shop when the bodyguards at the front door barred them from entering. Roland's men frowned upon seeing this. A few of them almost lashed out, but Roland raised his hand and gave them a deep look. Brothers, we would like to speak with the shop owner. Roland politely spoke to the guards even though they were only knight apprentices. One of the guards responded while firmly shaking his head. We apologize, sir, but our lord is busy with other matters. If it's really important, I can go inside to inform the manager for you. One of Roland's subordinates suddenly ran out of patience and snorted. You! Do you even know who you are speaking to? Roland glared at the man, but he couldn't bring himself to reprimand him since the guy was speaking out for his sake. He cupped his fists and said, I apologize for his behavior. We don't mean to cause trouble. Please inform your manager about our presence. The bodyguards' faces darkened. Step, step. Suddenly, a group of warriors stepped out of the soap shop. What is happening here? The person leading them asked with a stern voice. Sir Fredrin, the bodyguard saluted the man before one of them whispered something to his ears. Fredrin shifted his gaze toward Roland's group upon hearing the guard's report. An elite knight, and he is not any weaker than me. Both men locked gazes in that instant, and they were taken aback when they sensed each other's strength. I am Fredrin, the guard captain of this shop. Fredrin approached the other party and stood before him. Roland nodded. I'm Roland, the leader of this party. I'm pleased to meet you, Sir Fredrin. Likewise, Fredrin calmly replied. We came here to discuss business with the owner of the shop. I hope you can arrange a meeting for us. Roland could tell that this man was different than the captain of the city guards. Anthony was polite and cordial, but Fredrin didn't seem to have the intention of being friendly with them. This guy might be difficult to handle. This was Roland's first impression of him. Fredrin shook his head. Our lord isn't in the city, so your request might be difficult to fulfill. However, I can take you inside to speak with the manager. He has the authority to discuss any business matters related to the store. I see. Roland was only trying his luck, so he wasn't too disappointed with his response. Discussing business is just a secondary matter. Our main goal is to have a chance to speak with the Silver Swords. Hopefully, the manager can help me arrange a meeting with them. Otherwise, we would have to visit their estate directly. Roland was very particular with etiquette. He also didn't want to offend the Silver Swords, so he was willing to go through this much trouble just to get the chance to meet them. Please lead the way. I would like to speak with the manager. Fredrin nodded. All right, but you can only take 2 people inside. We don't usually allow armed guests inside, so I hope that you will understand our situation, he explained. Roland understood the implications in his words, so he didn't make things difficult for Fredrin. No problem. He then turned around and chose 2 of his men to follow him inside. Sir, what if this is a trap? We can't trust these people, one of his men whispered. Hearing this, Roland shook his head. I don't think the Silver Swords would be foolish enough to offend us. Just stay right here and leave the talking to me. But he didn't wait for their response and headed inside the shop with Fredrin. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. Meanwhile, in the orphanage, Anthony got down from his horse. Uncle Anthony, a few kids who were familiar with him eagerly called out when they saw him. Anthony adjusted his breathing and forced out a smile as he spoke to them. Hello, kids. Where is your Grandpa William? Grandpa is resting inside. One of the kids pointed at the newly renovated orphanage. Oh, is that so? Just stay here and continue playing. Uncle Anthony still has some matters to discuss with your grandpa. Anthony excused himself and headed inside the renovated building to look for William. Just when he was about to head in, he suddenly saw a figure stepping out onto the balcony on the 2nd floor of the building. Sir William. William furrowed his eyebrows. What happened? He felt that something was amiss when he saw Anthony's expression. Chapter 116. William arrives at the store. William invited Anthony to his meditation room. What is it this time? The old man asked as he gestured for Anthony to sit down. Anthony took his seat and responded with a serious look. Sir William, just earlier, a group consisting of 20 warriors came to the city. One of them is an elite knight and the rest are knights. Most importantly, they are heading to the soap shop. Hearing this, William's face fell as he rose to his feet. What did you say? Some of the kids in the orphanage were working at the soap shop. Please calm down, Sir William. I don't think those guys came here with bad intentions. Their leader seems to be a decent man. Anyway, I came here to tell you this. If you want to go there, we should get going now, Anthony suggested while trying to pacify the old man. William nodded with a grim look. Let's go. He didn't even bother to change his clothes, but he grabbed the sword leaning diagonally against the wall next to his cabinet. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. At the soap shop, Roland was now sitting inside Vince's office while his 2 subordinates stood behind him. In front of him was the manager of the shop, Vince, and Fredrin. After introducing themselves, Roland immediately stated his intention. Sir Vince, to tell you the truth, our main objective is to meet Lord Alaric and Lord Lucas. He paused for a moment before he emphasized his next words. There is something important that I would like to discuss with them. Vince understood the meaning behind his words. It was like politely telling him that he had no authority to hear the information and only the Silver Swords could hear it. With Fredrin beside him, Vince felt more reassured, so he managed to calm his nerves. He might not be a warrior, but he could tell that Roland wasn't an ordinary person based on his gait and bearing. Vince pretended to be in deep thought before he carefully replied, "Since it's like this, how about I send Sir Fredrin's team to escort you to North Pine Town? I'll also write a recommendation letter for you so that your group will be allowed to enter House Silversword's estate." What do you think about this, Sir Roland? He had already discussed this with Alaric beforehand, so he didn't bother to make things hard for Roland to prevent discord between both parties. That would be great. Roland was relieved. He was already prepared to be rejected, but it seemed like the Silverswords had already made arrangements. Just give me a moment to write the recommendation letter. In the meantime, why don't you check the shop's products? We can give you some free samples to try. I'm sure you'll love them, Vince chuckled. Hearing this, Roland wanted to reject the offer, but he felt that it was too rude, so he reluctantly nodded his head. All right. Then I'll trouble you to write the recommendation letter. It's no trouble at all. Vince waved his hand as if it was just a small matter. He then sent Fredrin a knowing look. When the latter saw this, he immediately stood up and nodded to Roland. "Sir Roland, I will take you to see the products." Roland nodded and stood up from his seat. After they left his office, Vince could finally relax. Man, that was scary. Who is that guy? Phew! He wiped off the sweat on his face as he let out a heavy breath. Fredrin brought Roland and his two men to the display area. The shop was crowded with customers, and most were women from rich households, which was obvious from their flamboyant style. Fredrin beckoned to Josephus, who was keeping watch at the aisle. Seeing this, the young knight immediately headed towards him. "What can I do for you, Sir Fredrin? Can you ask one of our staff to accommodate these gentlemen? I'm not familiar with the products, so I need their help," Fredrin whispered to him. "I see. Just wait here for a moment while I call one of them over." Josephus left right away. A few moments later, a young lady dressed in a customized uniform approached them with a professional smile. "Hello, Sir Fredrin. Are these the guests who require assistance?" Fredrin nodded. "That's right. Please bring our products for them to see. The manager has already given his approval to give these guests some free samples." "All right. Just give me a moment to get the products." The young lady excused herself and left. The soap shop experienced a huge boom in sales, so more workers had been hired to accommodate the customers. Roland could see that the business was successful even though he wasn't an expert. At this moment, he suddenly sensed a powerful aura from outside the shop. Furthermore, this aura was so much more powerful than his own that he felt suppressed. He narrowed his eyes as he turned his head at the entrance. From there, he saw an old man calmly walking inside the shop. His gaze was tranquil and unfathomable. When their eyes met, Roland felt like he was looking at a predator, a transcendent knight. Sir William Fredrin was also surprised to see the old man. After coming to the store, he had acquainted himself with this old man, so he was familiar with him. William nodded to Fredrin before he turned his gaze towards Roland. His stern face broke into a smile, and the pressure from earlier seemed to have vanished like a puff of smoke. "I am William. My grandchildren work here, so I came to check on them." The old man spouted a random reason to explain his arrival. "William, I don't remember there being another transcendent knight under House Silversword other than the Baron himself. Who is this old man?" While gathering his senses, Roland extended his hand with a cordial smile. "I'm honored to meet you, Sir William. My name is Roland." Chapter 117, An Old Friend. William observed the atmosphere and he realized that he might have jumped to conclusions earlier. He nonchalantly nodded and just decided to go with the flow since it was already too late to turn back. "You have good taste, Sir Roland. The scented soap here is a unique product. As you can see, the noble ladies love it." William had a wealth of experience, so he managed to come up with a good topic. Roland laughed awkwardly. Yes, you're right, Sir William." At this moment, the young female worker whom they had spoken with earlier came back with a basket full of scented soap boxes. She politely greeted William before she showed the products to Roland. "Sir, these are our products. This one is the... She introduced the different kinds of scented soap one by one. With her arrival, William immediately took the chance to leave after waving at Roland and Fredrin, but he didn't step out of the store. He headed straight to the production room where the children at the orphanage were working. Meanwhile, Roland was relieved now that the old man was gone. The pressure emitted by the old man was so intense that he thought that he was being targeted. "Please don't mind him," Fredrin's voice drifted into his ears. Roland stared at the elite knight as he continued. "So William is overprotective of the children of the orphanage since he treats them like his own grandchildren." Roland smiled wryly while nodding his head. "I understand." A moment later, Vince came out of his office and handed the recommendation letter to Roland. "Thank you for waiting, Sir Roland. If there's nothing else, I suggest that you leave while it's still early." The weather might not be too favorable this evening, Vince beamed as he offered him his suggestion. "Is that so? Then I'll take your advice. Thank you for your help, Sir Vince." Roland cupped his fists. "No problem. You can come and visit me anytime. I can offer you a discount if you buy our products." Vince chuckled. He then sent Fredrin a knowing look. Seeing his signal, Fredrin cleared his throat and made a this-way gesture as he spoke to Roland. "Let's head this way, sir. I will prepare my men to escort you guys to North Pine Town." "All right." Roland nodded and followed him out of the store. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. Meanwhile, at the training ground of House Silversword's estate. "My lord, I have already practiced stabbing thousands of times by now. Can you teach me a different move?" Aelia stared at Alaric with a pleading look. Alaric taught her the fundamental techniques of swordsmanship, but he had mostly taught her techniques related to stabbing. He told her that it was necessary to build a solid foundation before learning other sword techniques. She followed his teaching methods, and despite her frustrations for only learning stabbing techniques, she didn't complain. However, after the recent mission in the Evergreen Forest, she realized that she still had a lot of room for improvement. Alaric stared at the stubborn young lady. Her skin had already become tanned after being constantly exposed to the sun, and her body had also transformed from that of a skinny young woman to an athletic warrioress. He had seen her relentless efforts under his tutelage, and she was even more hardworking than her male colleagues. "Aelia, I only taught you how to stab because you are new to swordsmanship. Teaching you other techniques would only bring negative results. But you are right. I can see that you are now ready to learn another sword technique." Alaric smiled faintly. Hearing this, Aelia was pleasantly surprised. In truth, she only wanted to try her luck, and she had even prepared herself for a cold rejection. Who would have thought that Alaric would actually agree to her request? "This time I'll be teaching you how to properly slash your word. Try to observe my movements." Alaric grabbed his sword and performed a series of slashes. His actions looked simple with no flashy movements added. Whoosh! Whoosh! His sword made a tearing sound as he swiped through the air. Aelia watched him carefully without blinking her eyes. As someone who had received his guidance on stabbing techniques, she knew that Alaric's movements weren't simple. It might look like a basic slash on the surface, but the degree of control, the angle of the slash, and many other details were being followed. Together, they form an unimpressive-looking, but seamless slash that could bring out one's full strength with every swing. This was what she had comprehended after reaching a decent understanding of the stabbing technique he taught her. Whoosh! After one final slash, Alaric put down his sword and glanced over at Aelia. "Did you see it well?" he asked. Aelia smiled in embarrassment while shaking her head. "Yes, my lord, but I won't be able to execute the movements perfectly like you do." That's normal. Unlike him who had the SSS-Rank swordsmanship trait, normal people had to learn using their own comprehension. He didn't even need to train hard to understand and execute the most complex sword techniques. It was like the sword had become a part of him, an extension of his body. It was the most accurate description of what it felt like to have the SSS-Rank swordsmanship trait. "Show me what you have understood." He motioned for her to take out her sword. Aelia nodded and pulled her sword. She She felt a bit nervous now that Alaric was observing her. To calm her nerves, she took a deep breath and shook off all the distractions as she tried to remember Alaric's movements. In the next moment, she lifted her sword and imitated what she had remembered. Whoosh! Whoosh! Alaric could see her flaws at a glance, but he didn't correct her immediately. She's focusing too much on imitating me, but it's quite surprising that she comprehended that much after only one demonstration. At that moment, he felt that she might be more talented in swordsmanship than he had imagined. Impressive, she just needs a little bit more training. That's enough, Alaric calmly uttered as he motioned for her to stop. Looking at Alaric's indifferent face, Aelia didn't know if she had performed below his standards. Don't focus on imitating me. My sword is different than yours and our physical characteristics aren't the same. You must integrate what you have. Alaric explained the principles of the movements to her in a way that made it easier for her to understand. Aelia listened with great attention. Soon, she revealed a look of realization as if something clicked in her mind. I see, so that's why it felt so weird when I tried to imitate it. She mumbled something under her breath before she eagerly tried for the second time. Alaric didn't disturb her and just quietly watched her performance. Whoosh! Whoosh! The strength behind each slash is stronger now, but it still needs some work. She already has the basic principles, so she just needs to incorporate everything she learned until it is deeply engraved in her mind. While she was absorbed in her training, Alaric sensed someone approaching from the distance. He turned his head and frowned when he noticed a few unfamiliar figures riding on horses together with Fredrin's team. With just a glance, he could already feel the aura emitted by the man who seemed to be the leader of the group. A peak late knight. It was a level that was comparable to Fredrin and Warwick, but still a bit weaker than Galliner. Hold on, that person? Alaric's eyes trembled when got a clearer look at the man. It was a familiar face, one who had been with him for the longest time on the battlefield. It's been a while, Sir Roland. This man was one of the battalion commanders who led the Crown Prince's army in his past life. He was a powerful warrior who would soon have his name etched in the Estanian dragon leaderboard. Clip-clop, clip-clop. The clip-clop sounds of the horses made Aelia stop her training. She was a bit annoyed after having been disturbed, but when she saw the intimidating group coming towards them, her annoyance turned into alarm. A few moments later, the group stopped in front of them and climbed down their horses. Fredrin and his subordinates walked towards Alaric and bowed to him. Greetings, my lord. Roland's group seemed to have realized Alaric's identity when they saw this. Can you tell me what's going on here? Alaric calmly asked. Although he already knew the other party's identity, he had to pretend like he didn't know. My lord, this man is Sir Roland, an elite knight under. Fredrin quickly made the introductions. It's a pleasure to meet you, Lord Alaric. I have been eager to see you in person after I heard tales about your amazing talent. Roland stepped forward and gave him a standard salute. He's just as I remember him, scary on the outside, but a kind man deep down. Alaric's lips curved upwards as he stared at his friend. Chapter 118. Discussion with Roland. Alaric's eyes were filled with complex emotions. He had so many words to tell him, but they seemed stuck in his throat. You flatter me, Sir Roland. Why don't we head in first? As for your men, I'll send someone to arrange their accommodation. Roland was surprised by his friendliness, and he had this weird feeling as if they had known each other for a long time. He couldn't point his fingers as to why he had this reaction upon his first encounter with Alaric. All right, I'll take you up on that offer. Roland nodded with a faint smile. Before heading inside the mansion, Alaric told Aelia to practice by herself. He had already taught her the basic principles of slashing, so she only needed to comprehend the movements on her own. A while later, Alaric brought Roland to the spacious guest hall, and he even asked the servants to prepare a sumptuous meal for him and his subordinates. After taking their seats, Alaric was the first to open his mouth. So can you tell me why someone from the central area has come to visit our small town? Hearing this, Roland's expression turned serious as he adjusted his sitting posture. "My lord, I won't hide it from you then." He paused as if he was gathering his thoughts before he continued. "I don't know if you have already heard about this. His Majesty is not in good health. It's been months since he was bedridden. The imperial physicians provided him with numerous treatments, but nothing worked." By this point, Roland shook his head with a grim look. The Empire's upper echelons are getting restless because of this, and there are even rumors of rebellion among a small group of nobles. To prevent chaos from happening, His Highness, the Crown Prince, is gathering the loyal subjects of the Empire to rise into arms and protect Astania from the traitors. "We have gathered." Roland disclosed the existence of a force behind the Crown Prince, but he didn't tell him their most important secrets. After all, Alaric was only a prospective ally. Alaric remained silent as the other party laid down everything on the table. They were very sincere in their invitation. This was also why he joined the Crown Prince's army in his past life. Their sincerity moved him. However, he wouldn't make the same choice this time because he had seen the results of that choice and it was something that he didn't want to witness again. "This is a very important matter, Sir Roland. I can't decide on my own." Alaric didn't give him an answer right away. "Why don't we take things slowly while I discuss this with the Baron? Your group can stay here in the meantime. I'm sure you guys will love the natural landscapes here." Roland didn't make things difficult for him, so he nodded with a smile. "All right. Thank you for letting us stay here, my lord." Alaric waved his hand. "It's just a minor matter." About 20 minutes later, a servant came to inform him that the food was ready to be served to the guests. "Sir Roland, I have prepared a sumptuous meal for you and your men. You guys should eat first since you traveled a long way to get here. I also need to speak with the Baron about the information you told me." Alaric had to inform his parents about the situation. Roland couldn't bring himself to reject the offer. Besides, his men haven't eaten anything since they came to North Pine Town. "All right. I hope to hear the good news from you soon, my lord." Hearing this, Alaric didn't say anything and just chuckled. "I'll take my leave first. Please enjoy your meal." Alaric stood up and left after excusing himself. He immediately sent someone to call his mother before he headed to the Baron's study. "Knock, knock, knock. Come in." Alaric pushed the door open after getting the Baron's approval. He noticed that the butler, Bastian, was there pouring tea for the Baron. When the old butler saw that it was Alaric, he respectfully bowed to him. Alaric smiled and nodded at the butler. "I heard that we have guests from the central area. Are they the same people who caused a scene at your soap shop?" the Baron asked as he pointed the seat in front of his desk. Alaric sat and moved the chair closer. "Yes, it's them, and according to that person, they are working for the Crown Prince." The Baron didn't respond immediately and motioned to the butler to give Alaric a cup of tea. The butler was quick to react. He grabbed a teacup from the cabinet next to the window and wiped it clean with a white cloth before placing it in front of Alaric. With practiced movements, he poured tea into the cup. While the butler was pouring tea for him, Lucas finally spoke. "The Crown Prince, huh? I've seen him on multiple occasions. His Highness doesn't seem to be a bad person, but he tends to make wrong decisions because of his rash personality." This was his impression of the Crown Prince. "He is a charismatic man, so I'm sure that many households would support him. Unfortunately, he lacks a reliable advisor." He sighed and shook his head. The imperial family was full of intrigue. He was once scouted by the Emperor 2 decades ago, but Lucas rejected him and decided to guard the north instead. This was because he didn't want to be involved with the schemes and plots of the imperial family since his wife was pregnant with Alaric at that time. At this moment, there was a series of knocks on the door. "Knock, knock, knock. Come in." Maria stepped inside the room dressed in thick winter clothes. She nodded to the butler before she glanced at her husband and son. "Take your seat. We need your advice on the situation." Lucas pointed to the seat opposite Alaric. Maria flicked her hair as she elegantly took her seat. What's the matter? Chapter 119, Teaching Roland. I see. So it's the Crown Prince. Maria fell into deep thought after hearing the situation from them. After a moment of silence, she lifted her head and said, "We will proceed as planned." Hearing this, Alaric and Lucas nodded with grim faces. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. The next day, Roland still didn't receive any response from Alaric. It seems like they are still debating over the matter, but their hesitation is understandable. After all, His Majesty is still alive. If he recovers, the Crown Prince could receive punishment for gathering private forces, and the people who followed him would also be punished. Roland thought deeply as he went out of the guest mansion to discreetly observe the activity inside the estate. As soon as he stepped out, the cold morning breeze hit his skin, but it hardly affected him because of his strong physique. As he walked along the snow-covered, cobbled pathway, he heard a familiar sound from the distance. Someone is training this early in this weather. He was taken aback. Feeling curious, Roland followed the direction where he heard the sound, and soon he arrived at an open training ground. There he saw one man repeatedly performing the same sword movement. Lord Alaric. He didn't expect that it was actually Alaric. Roland observed for a while. He thought that Alaric would perform the same sword movement, but then the latter changed his pattern all of a sudden. This time, he was repeatedly stabbing his sword into the air. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. The more Roland watched, the more he noticed that something was quite different with Alaric's style and technique. It wasn't the conventional sword stab that he was used to, but a version that seemed to be entirely different. The most surprising thing was that every stab was swift and decisive, almost without any flaw. He looks like he is only casually stabbing his sword, but each stab brings out his maximum potential. Roland was amazed by this, and he even wanted to follow Alaric's training routine, but he was too embarrassed to disturb him. A moment later, Alaric stopped after he received a notification from the cyan screen, telling him that he had completed his daily mission. He had already sensed Roland's arrival earlier, but he didn't stop his training and continued all the way until he completed the exercises. Good thing I didn't use that sword in today's training, Alaric thought as he waved his hand while staring at Roland. The elite knight immediately approached him after seeing that he had stopped his training. "Good morning, my lord. I apologize for disturbing you." Alaric waved his hand and smiled. "It's all right. I'm already done with my training." Roland hesitated. He wanted to ask Alaric about the routine he performed earlier, but he was too embarrassed to mention it. He also felt that it was inappropriate to ask about someone's techniques. Alaric saw through him at a glance, and he couldn't help but chuckle. "Do you want to learn it? I can give you some pointers," he uttered jokingly. Roland didn't expect that he would be seen through just like that, and it was even someone who was less than half his age. "How could I?" Alaric raised his hand and shook his head. "It's not a big deal. Let me show you." He didn't wait for his response and pulled his sword. Roland took a step back to give him some room to show his sword techniques. In the next moment, Alaric swung his sword. Whoosh! It was the same sword movement he had seen earlier. Amazing! His swordsmanship is even better than mine. He didn't want to admit it, but the young man in front of him had already surpassed him in terms of pure technique. "Have you seen it clearly?" Alaric smiled at the serious-faced warrior. Roland gave him a look of undisguised admiration. "I have learned a lot from you, my lord. Stop flattering me and show me what you comprehended." Alaric tossed his sword to the elite knight, making the other party stunned. "Huh?" With a bewildered look on his face, Roland caught the sword. Is he seriously thinking of teaching me his technique? He couldn't believe it. The sword technique that Alaric displayed was unlike any other. If it was someone else, they would definitely guard this technique closely and never let a stranger learn it. However, Alaric didn't seem to share the same ideology. "Stop dawdling before I change my mind." Alaric's voice sounded more serious this time, so Roland no longer hesitated. He adjusted his stance and moved the sword according to what he had remembered. Whoosh! Whoosh! Alaric watched him in silence. His comprehension is worse than Alia's, but he has some talent. At least it's on the same level as Renati's and Rasmus's. He felt tempted to take this man on his side, but he immediately dropped the idea when he recalled Roland's personality. This man was loyal and he would never betray his lord. Well, there is an exception: his principles. He knew that Roland followed a strict principle. He was willing to sacrifice his life for his lord, but he will never hurt the innocent. In his past life, there was one time when Roland disobeyed his lord's commands. It was because he was ordered to attack a village for its strategic location. Roland was supposed to be executed for his disobedience, but because of his contributions, he wasn't executed and was only demoted to that of a normal warrior. That was also how he had found his way into Alaric's group. Is there any way to bring this guy to our side? While he was seriously pondering about this, Roland lowered his sword and looked at Alaric. Did I execute it right, my lord? Roland's voice pulled him from his thoughts. It's not bad, but your form still needs a lot of polishing. I noticed that Alaric told him about the mistakes he made. Roland quietly listened. Chapter 120, Urgent Report. How about we spar for a bit? Of course, we are not allowed to use mana. Alaric wanted to take the chance to use this guy as his training dummy. It was rare to find a good sparring partner like this since the elite knights of the household were always busy with their respective tasks. Roland was taken aback. Are you serious, my lord? He thought that he had heard Alaric wrong. After all, he was an elite knight, so he was inherently stronger than Alaric. Even without using his mana, he was confident that he could beat anyone below the realm of elite knights. This wasn't baseless overconfidence, but the belief he had in his abilities. Lord Alaric might be a swordsmanship genius, but technique alone doesn't win a fight. He thought to himself as he looked at Alaric, who was walking toward the nearby weapon rack. After choosing two wooden swords, Alaric tossed the other one to Roland, who caught it reflexively. Roland temporarily put aside the steel sword he got from Alaric and played with the wooden sword. It felt light in his hand, but as an expert swordsman, he quickly adjusted to its weight. Then I will accept your challenge, my lord. Please guide me. He lightly bowed to Alaric. Good, Alaric chuckled. He thought that he would trigger a system mission, but there was no reaction from the cyan screen. This left him a bit disappointed. The two locked gazes while quietly assessing each other. As a seasoned veteran, Roland had experienced numerous battles. There were times when he had almost died during those battles, but he managed to survive all those encounters. A spar was like a walk in the park for him, nothing to be nervous about. However, facing Alaric, he felt strangely nervous. I'm nervous. He was surprised when he realized that his hands were shaking. Roland shook off his random thoughts and took a deep breath to calm his nerves. In that instant, Alaric suddenly made his move. Whoosh! It was a direct stab with no superfluous movement. Roland lifted his sword, casually deflecting the stab aimed at his chest. Pack! Alaric frowned when he sensed the other party's power. He had already maxed out his strength, but there was still a huge gap between him and an elite knight. That seemingly casual deflection made his balance shift, forcing him to adjust his center of gravity. Taking the chance, Roland released a flurry of attacks. Pack! Pack! However, Alaric seemed to have defied gravity by parrying his attacks with unnatural angles. It was an unconventional defensive technique that caught Roland off guard. Pack! Pack! Their spar continued for another half a minute when an urgent shout forced them to stop. My lord! Alaric lowered the training sword and looked at the approaching warrior with a frown. Roland felt that it was a pity. He was starting to enjoy the spar, but it was unfortunately cut short. Alaric sent him an apologetic gaze. Let's do this again next time, Sir Roland. The elite knight knew that it must be something serious, so he nodded without complaining. What happened? Alaric asked the warrior with a stern look. The warrior took a moment to gather his breath before he replied. My lord, there is a request for reinforcements from Alverden. Their messenger told me that they had sighted a large group of orcs approaching the town. Hearing this, Alaric was bewildered. Orcs. The orc invasion isn't supposed to happen anytime soon. Why did it suddenly? From his memory, there was still more than a year before the orc invasion. Furthermore, the orcs targeted Vale and not Alverden. Something has changed. Alaric felt that he had something to do with the sudden changes of the events. Inform the warriors and have them gather in front of the main mansion, Alaric instructed. Yes, my lord, the warrior acknowledged his command with a solemn nod. Go! I need to inform the Baron about this. Alaric waved his hand. The warrior didn't dawdle and left after giving him a snappy salute. Alaric turned his head over to Roland and smiled bitterly as he said, Sir Roland, it seems like our discussion has to be delayed. Are you planning to send reinforcements? Roland asked in surprise. Of course. Alverden doesn't have a proper military and they only have a handful of knights and knight apprentices. They wouldn't be able to survive an orc invasion, Alaric responded with a grim voice. I'm sorry, Sir Roland, but I need to go. Without waiting for his answer, Alaric turned around and left. Roland watched the young knight leave with haste. Normally, a noble household wouldn't care about other territories except their own, but there was no ounce of hesitation in Alaric's eyes when he mentioned sending reinforcements. It was rare to find someone like this, especially within the nobility. Most of them were conceited people who only cared about their own interests. Should I go and take a look? This thought crossed his mind. After some internal struggle, he shook his head and headed back to the guest mansion. Meanwhile, Alaric went straight to the Baron's study to inform him about the situation. But when he arrived, he discovered that Lucas was speaking with Warwick and Henry. Alaric, it's good that you're here. Lucas beckoned to him. From the looks of it, the Baron was already aware of the situation. Alaric didn't say anything and just nodded at Warwick and Henry before he took his seat. I'm discussing with Warwick and Henry on who should we send to Alverden. Now that you're here, why don't you help me decide? Lucas stared deeply at him. Without hesitation, Alaric responded, I'm going there myself. Lucas and the two elite knights weren't surprised to hear this. They had already expected that he would volunteer for the task. Lucas leaned on his seat and nodded. All right, you have my approval, but you must bring at least two elite knights with you.